Congressman Ramirez just delivered the most devastating takedown in congressional history. In 5 minutes, he systematically destroyed Secretary Noem with documented evidence of corruption, illegal fund redirections, and constitutional violations. His final words, demanding her immediate resignation, sent shockwaves through the chamber. This isn't political theater. It's a complete institutional meltdown.
Gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, it's good to see you. I'm going to go straight to the questions because I have a lot of them. Let me start just following up with Congressman Goldman about judiciary. Do you agree that the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land? Yes or no, Secretary?
We are
Yes.
abiding by all federal judges' orders, absolutely.
So yes, it's a co-equal branch of government. Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Do you agree that Congress is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor legislation and appropriations duly authorized by Congress? Yes or no?
Yes, that's why
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to work
Well,
for
let me
the
ask you the
president that is
follow-up question
enforcing
here because I
laws.
have a lot of them. Do you agree that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse? Yes or no?
Yes, it is a duty
Do you
of
believe
Congress
that,
to be
let me
able
ask
to
you another
appropriate
follow-up, it's
funds.
just yes or no. Do you believe you have the power to disregard congressional appropriations and unilaterally repurpose funds that have been duly appropriated by Congress? Yes or no?
Ma'am, we are not doing that.
So the
We are
answer to
using
you is
dollars
no.
as to
All
how
right,
they
well,
were
it was a yes
appropriated.
or no,
We're ensuring the
Secretary. Let me
programs have
continue.
integrity.
Interestingly, you said no. But since you've been Secretary, you have repeatedly disregarded the law. You have illegally impounded funds that Congress appropriated and that your branch of government must implement pursuant to the law. Yet you've closed offices established in law, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, the Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services, and you've canceled contracts for programs authorized in law, including shelter and service programs and citizenship and integration grants. You've obstructed and roughed up members of this committee as they attempted to conduct congressional oversight, and then you vilified them. But my question is, if they were so bad, why were they allowed to go in after to conduct oversight? Let me just continue. You redirected funds to terrorize our communities. You created taxpayer-funded political propaganda campaigns to terrorize families and children who don't sleep at night because of the terror of those commercials that you are putting out there. You hold sick, disrespectful press conferences in my state where, let me be clear, you are not welcome. You corruptly used emergency authority to avoid procurement to make Trump's private prison donors richer by directing $45 billion for them to expand ICE detention centers. You defunded work to address real threats to the homeland, all while you pursued college newspaper editors, labor leaders, and even a Harvard scientist who failed to declare frog embryos at the airport. Clearly, we don't have time for all my questions, so I have 13 pages worth of questions that I will be submitting to the record that I expect you and the administration to answer. But here is my final question to you. When you took your oath, did you swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
So I find that laughable. You don't behave like someone who takes that oath seriously. And let me tell you why. We don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation, and our country is not a playground for his or your twisted authoritarian fantasies. We are a democracy. We defend the Constitution and we affirm the rule of law. We respect the co-equal branches of government and we uphold our rights, even when we disagree. The foundation of our nation is based on a core set of constitutional rights upon which our prosperity, our pluralism, and our peace depend on it. You, however, have been leading this work for 116 days. And in that time, you have profiled and dehumanized our neighbors. You've betrayed our constitutional commitment to due process. You've deported United States citizens. You've undermined the courts. You've broken the law. You've engaged in corruption, and you've weaponized the immigration system to violate civil rights. As Senator Murphy perfectly stated, your department is out of control, but you're responsible. You have betrayed the sacred fundamentals of your oath. And I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. And I again, to your face, demand your immediate resignation. And I put it and place it on the record for all of us to see. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Generally yields. Mr. Gabarino is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being here today. I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity Infrastructure Protection, so I work with CISA a lot.
What Congressman Ramirez accomplished in those 5 minutes wasn't just questioning, it was a masterclass in constitutional accountability that exposed the dangerous erosion of democratic norms under Noem's leadership. His methodical approach revealed how a cabinet official can systematically dismantle the very institutions they swore to protect. Ramirez began with foundational questions about co-equal branches of government, forcing Noem to publicly acknowledge constitutional principles she had repeatedly violated. This wasn't academic, it was strategic legal entrapment. By securing her agreement that Congress controls appropriations, he created a legal trap that made her subsequent denials look absurd while establishing her own words as evidence against her. The concept of congressional power of the purse exists precisely to prevent executive overreach. When Ramirez documented how Noem illegally impounded funds, closed legally mandated offices, and redirected taxpayer money to private prison donors, he wasn't describing policy disagreements, he was outlining criminal behavior. The $45 billion redirection to ICE detention centers represents corruption that transforms public service into private enrichment. This financial manipulation reveals constitutional subversion. Each impounded dollar represents Congress's will being overturned by executive fiat. When Noem claimed compliance while violating appropriation laws, she demonstrated the classic authoritarian tactic of using procedural language to mask lawless behavior. Ramirez's accusation about terrorizing communities through propaganda campaigns touches on something deeper than immigration policy. When government uses taxpayer funds to create fear-based messaging targeting children, it crosses from governance into psychological warfare against its own citizens. This isn't about border security, it's about using state power to traumatize vulnerable populations for political gain. The systematic closure of civil rights offices reveals the administration's strategy. Eliminate oversight mechanisms, then claim compliance while violating the law. By shuttering the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties and the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, Noem didn't just ignore the law, she actively dismantled the infrastructure designed to prevent abuse. The closure pattern follows deliberate logic. First, defund the watchdogs, then claim no one is watching when violations occur. When oversight disappears, abuse becomes inevitable. Ramirez's most devastating moment came when he connected Noem's oath of office to her actual conduct. Constitutional oaths aren't ceremonial, they're legal commitments that carry consequences. When she swore to defend the Constitution, she accepted the obligation to respect congressional authority, judicial independence, and due process rights. Every violation since represents a betrayal of that sacred trust and potential. Grounds for impeachment. The deportation of U.S. citizens represents the ultimate failure of due process. When government agencies are so focused on quotas and political theater that they exile American citizens, the system has collapsed into authoritarianism. This isn't about immigration, enforcement, it's about fundamental competence and constitutional protection. Ramirez's demand for resignation wasn't political theater, it was institutional necessity. When cabinet officials systematically violate their oaths, ignore congressional oversight, and weaponize government agencies, resignation becomes the only path to restore legitimacy. His call represents what accountability looks like when normal oversight mechanisms fail. the stakes extend beyond any single official. When the executive branch treats congressional appropriations as suggestions, when it closes oversight offices, when it uses emergency authority to enrich private donors, democracy itself becomes the casualty. Ramirez understood that his questions weren't just about policy, they were about whether constitutional government can survive deliberate sabotage from within. This confrontation matters because it demonstrates how quickly institutions can be hollowed out by officials who view their oath as an obstacle rather than a guide. Noem's tenure shows what happens when political loyalty replaces constitutional duty, and Ramirez's questioning provides the roadmap for restoration. When cabinet officials systematically violate their constitutional obligations, they break the social contract that holds democratic society together. Citizens expect their government to follow the same rules it enforces on them. When that expectation crumbles, so does the legitimacy that makes voluntary compliance possible.